So we've set up a couple basic things, and now we're going to add a dialogue system. And so with the dialogue, you can just have like some basic dialogue where you just talk to different characters. But you can also use variables, kind of like we used in Twine, where you can have conditions based on what items you have. So what we can do is set up, different dialogues based on whether we've collected cheese. So when we talk to the mouse, if we don't have any cheese, we can have this mouse say like, do you have any cheese? And if we have cheese, we can give the mouse cheese, and then we can take away from our cheese inventory and make other decisions based on that. So I'll just show a couple examples. There's a lot with the dialogue system is actually pretty robust. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You're not really required to do any of those things for the project, but if you want to, there's a bunch of options there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put my avatar in this room number 2, so that when I'm testing, I don't have to like walk into the room every single time. You can do that to kind of speed up the testing process, because if you have like 10 rooms and you want to test one room, it's always going to start wherever the avatar is. But you just have to remember to put the avatar back in your starting room, when you publish it. First we're going to add a quick dialogue just to our cheese item. So any item or sprite can have a dialogue, and you can write the dialogue right here, or you can open up a dialogue window and you get a little bit more of a robust editor. And so when you create an item, it's going to have a default dialogue associated with it, but you can create other dialogues and then associate it if you want. There's a little settings button here where you can choose different dialogues. So you have some options there. But I'm just going to go with the default. And so for an item, the dialogue is just going to show up when we collect the item. So the items are a little bit limited in the sense that if you interact with the item, you will always collect the item. So you can't interact with an item and then leave the item there. That's really the main difference between an item and a character or a sprite, other than the fact that you can make multiple of the items. So for our cheese dialogue, I'm just going to make something really quick. So you can see with the dialogue option, we have a bunch of different buttons of things that we can do. So in dialogue, you can just like have the cheese say something, and then you can also add a break between dialogues. There are lists. So you can have like a list of things that you go through. You can also have like a cycle that repeats. You can have a shuffle list, which means it chooses a random one from your dialogue tree. And then you can have a branching list where it chooses different dialogues based on conditions. There's also room actions. So you can change the room based on a dialogue. Like you can exit, you can go to another room, you can change the color, you can change your avatar, so you can have multiple avatars. And you can lock or unlock exits in the room, so you can open up doors in the room. So there's a lot of like little things that you can change through dialogue. You can also play sounds, and then you can change items. So you can either increase the item count, you can set it to a specific number, you can do all these different things with that. So for our cheese dialogue, let's just do a simple dialogue. So you can say, you can just say you collect a block of cheese, and inside this editor, if you click this little AB button here, you can add different effects to this dialogue. So you can change the color. You can choose what color you want it to be. You only have obviously the 3 colors in your color palette. You can choose which avatar it will draw, and then you can choose these like little effects. So like if I want to make the cheese do a little animation, I can choose an effect like which one is this? This one is wavy. Oh, shake. So yeah, when you add these little blocks, it adds these like little sort of short codes. And you have to put the text in between the short codes. So if I put cheese in between these 2 like little shake short codes, that'll shake the cheese. So when I do all that, it'll make this dialogue, and you can actually show the code behind the dialogue. So you can just like edit the dialogue right directly in this like text box, or you can use the editor here. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So if I go up to one of these cheese blocks, I'm going to see this text, and you can see it shakes the cheese part. And then when I hit enter, I leave the dialogue. And so this dialogue just gets automatically triggered whenever I collect a block of cheese. And then you can see if we open our inventory, you can see now I have 4 cheese blocks. So that's kind of like the most basic version of the dialogue, but there's a lot of other options. So let's go over to our mouse. And so I'm going to select the mouse sprite. I don't have to have this open. I can just like choose my dialogues here. And then there's also the inventory section. So if I go to dialogue, you can see all the dialogues in my game system. And so I can click on, the different dialogues to open the box. So there's multiple different ways to get to each one of the like assets that we want to use. So let's set up our mouse dialogue. I'm just going to close out of here. So I'm going to have the mouse say, hi, I'm a mouse. And then we'll make a decision based on whether we have cheese of what to say next. So to do that, I can click add and then go to lists. And I can go to a branching list. And then it has this like little setup where I can say different things based on what's in my inventory. So I can edit this. I can say if cheese, and then let's say greater than or equal to 1. So if I have at least 1 or more blocks of cheese that I've collected, I can say, the mouse can say, ooh, I see you have some cheese. Can I have 1? And if we don't have cheese, we'll have the mouse say, do you have any cheese? Okay, so, and if we look at the code, you'll see what that looks like. So there's like, it adds some brackets in here. It has like a little if statement. And so this is just kind of like short code. It's not like, this gets turned into, JavaScript code once it gets, everything gets bundled together. But that's a little bit of like a short code that you can edit if you want to make changes that way. So let's play and see that dialogue tree. So I'm going to walk up to the mouse, and if I get close enough to the mouse, it triggers the dialogue. The dialogue box also appears either on the top or the bottom based on where you are in the scene. If you're in the top half of the scene, the dialogue box appears at the bottom. If you're in the bottom half of the scene, the dialogue box appears at the top. So he says, hi, I'm a mouse. Do you have any cheese? And you can see here that my dialogue gets squished together. So if you want those to be in 2 separate things, that's where we add a page break. So I forgot to do that, but we'll go back and do that in a moment. So he says, do you have any cheese? And he says that because I don't have any cheese. And so if I hit enter, that's just the end of the dialogue. So I might write that a little bit better to make it more clear that I need to collect cheese. But now if I collect some cheese and I go back to talk to the mouse, it says, hi, I'm a mouse. Ooh, I see you have some cheese. Can I have 1? Okay, so let's edit this a little bit. So first I'm going to add a page break here. So I'm going to go to add and dialogue and page break. And then I want to move this up. So I have like my first dialogue here, and this leads into the branching. But if I want a page break in between and I just added it, I can click this up button and it'll move that page break up there. So now he's going to say, hi, I'm a mouse, and then there'll be a break, and then we'll go to this branching list. And so I want to update this a little bit. So if I have cheese, he's going to say, ooh, I see you have some cheese. Can I have 1? And then we can go from there. And it's a little bit limited here because we can't actually make decisions as a player. So if you've played a lot of RPGs, you know that usually when you do a dialogue tree, it gives you choices, but we actually can't do that here. The only thing we can do is set the sprites dialogue. So if we have cheese, we can like give the mouse cheese, but we can't like say, no, you can't have cheese. So it's a little bit limited in that sense. So from here, if we have cheese, he's going to say, can I have one? And then if we do, I'm just going to add an item action. So I'm going to say decrease item count. So I'm going to say cheese equals cheese minus 1. So if we have cheese, we're going to give him the cheese. So then we'll add another dialog from here. Well, actually, let's add a page break, and then we'll add a dialog and say, thank you for the cheese. And then, from here, you could do different things. Like he could say, since you gave me some cheese, I'll give you a secret about where to find, a magic spell or something like that. So I'll say, go to the right to find a magic spell. I haven't actually set this up yet, but this is just an example of how we can kind of use this dialogue to make that happen. In here, we want to, if we don't have any cheese, I'm just going to add a room action. I'm going to add a... how do I end the dialogue? Oh, you know what? Okay, I should have added this. Okay. I should have added this part under this specific dialogue. This is where it gets kind of tricky, because once you have this branch, now you can see there's an add button that's just for this branch versus just for this branch. And then these guys are part of the main dialogue. So I actually should have put these up here. I don't think there's a way to do that, so I'm just going to redo those. So I'm just going to X these. I'm going to delete these guys. So I'm going to click on this box. If cheese in inventory is greater than or equal to 1, he's going to say, I see I have some cheese. Can I have one? And here is where I'm going to add a page break and add a new dialogue where he says, thanks for the cheese. And then he could actually like unlock a door or give me another item or do other things. But we're just going to have him say, go to the right to find a magic spell. So there's lots of other things that we can do here, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to go from, just have him say that. Okay. And then now I have to kind of select this outer thing. It's a little tricky at this point, but I'm just going to add my variable action again. So I'm going to decrease my cheese count by 1. And so now if I look at this code, we're going to see it's a little bit more complex. There's this like whole section over here that follows this one branch. Okay. So let's try and see if that works. So if I go over here, if I don't have any cheese, he's just going to say, do you have any cheese? I don't have any cheese, so I'm going to go get some. I have a block of cheese now. And he's going to say, hi, I'm a mouse. Oh, I see you have some cheese. Can I have one? Thanks for the cheese. Go to the right to find the magic spell. And then one limitation again is if I click here again, he's just going to go through the same dialogue tree. And if I get a cheese again, he's going to go through the same dialogue tree as well. So one way that you can fix that is you can make a hidden variable basically that says like, did we get the magic spell, like, clue, and then that can skip the dialogue. So that gets a little more complicated. You don't have to do that, but that's often like the next step is I can go to my inventory and I can add a variable. So I can have a variable that is like, spell found, and I can set this to like 0 for no, and then I can set it to 1 and I can make a decision based on that. So now I can go in here and say for this guy, I can I can add a branch. This is going to get complicated. I can add a new list, branching list, and say if, oh no, I have to add, okay. No, it won't let me. Okay, so I have to add a variable action. Okay, this is probably more complicated than is gonna make sense. Okay, I'm just gonna skip this for now, but if that's something that you want to do, basically like track whether the dialogue happened or not, we can use a variable for that. But this thing is getting too complex already, so we're just going to leave it as is. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So yeah, that's the basic idea behind the dialogue. It is. It is a little bit complicated, and the editor gets really crunched in here. Yes. Yeah. But again, so there's a bunch of different things you can do here. So the room actions, you can leave the room, you can change stuff. There's a bunch of other stuff that you can try with the dialogue. So a lot of like working with this system is being like, okay, I want this specific thing to happen. How can I use the dialogue editor to achieve that? Because the dialogue editor is really the only way that you can add interactivity into Bitsy. Everything that you want, like if you want to add items or make changes to variables, things like that, all happens in the dialogue editor. All right. So yeah, it is a little confusing, but if you have a specific thing that you want to work on, we can go over a way to achieve it. So I'm going to stop here. We've covered everything except for the music part. Or actually, no, I want to go over the record GIF part. So I'm going to close out of these guys for a second. So when we do documentation, actually, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to put my avatar back in the first room. We have to remember to do that. So when we do documentation, you can obviously take screenshots of the interface, just like we did with Twine. But there's also a record GIF section. So you can take snapshots or recordings of the game running. So if I run the game and then start a recording, it will record, my playthrough. So I can like get my cheese, and then I can go talk to the mouse. And then I can continue on the way, and then I can stop the recording. And it's going to make a little animated GIF. So this is a nice way to do some documentation. And then you can also make screenshots of like the individual levels if you want. So I'm going to make the recording, and then I'll just, show you guys how to put that into a blog post. It's pretty easy, but just as an example. So we've got this GIF. It's going to disappear if you don't download it. So click download GIF, because if you leave and come back later or refresh the browser, that recording will disappear. You can also take snapshots. So if I take a snapshot, it's just going to make, one quick image. And I forget what this does. This probably just changes the size of it. So anyway, if we go back to downloads, you can see that recording. And this is an animated GIF, so it's kind of a larger file. It's 1.4 megabytes. That's not too bad. But we can put this on the blog, and so it's an easy way to document your progress. So let's just quickly go over that, because there's one tricky thing with GIFs on the OpenLab blog. So if I go to the OpenLab, and I'm going to make a new post. And I'll call this Bitsy documentation, and we can set the category to Bitsy. So if I upload my animated GIF here, I'm just gonna drag it here. One thing that may happen is WordPress does a lot of like image compression. And so depending on the size of the image, if I go to preview this, it looks like it maybe is gonna be fine. Yeah, it's playing the animation. So you wanna make sure that the animation is playing. Sometimes WordPress will make a copy of the image and then it will only copy like the first frame of the animation. So if you see that happen, you just have to change this resolution setting. So if you click on the image and go over to the menu to block, and then go down to this image area, you can see different resolutions. If your resolution is set to like medium or thumbnail or something like that, it's just gonna be a static image. The GIF will only work if you have the resolution set to full size. And for this first Bitsy post, you can just post like some documentation of what you've got so far. It doesn't have to be obviously like a whole scene. We're gonna work on this for another couple weeks. But just post what you've made in class today, and then you can give a short description of what you're thinking about making for the game. It doesn't have to be finalized, but just something of like the concept that you're working on, and we'll look at those in class next week, and we can discuss in class and give some feedback then. Okay, so that's what we're gonna work on for the rest of the class. Any questions on any of that?